Alright, so welcome to another episode of Inspired Content. I'm still working on getting better camera situation going on here, but this is a product or service week, and so this week I thought I'd share one of my new fascinations, which are these puzzle toys. I guess I can call them toys. I don't know if I would really call them toys, but this is something I really started exploring recently. I saw some videos of some people doing Rubik's Cubes, and it sort of opened up a doorway for me to start exploring some of these kinds of things again. So this is the standard Rubik's, the 3x3. This one is a, what is it? Qi cube. It's QIYI cube. See if I can get the logo up here. Of course, the camera and my arm don't work well together. Close enough. Anyway, so I did a little looking around and figuring out ways in which I could learn to do this. And then figuring out some of the techniques, and so I started with a beginner technique because I really just wanted to understand this a little bit more, and I thought I did pretty good with it. And then I started to understand how to do this relatively quickly, and it's kind of cool to be able to just say, like, I know how to do this and get what I want out of solving them. So that's pretty jumbled, but I'll get to that in a bit. And then here's the thing. This sort of broke me a little bit. Was this is another one that I was kind of curious about, and I snagged it because I saw some potential in this. This is what's called I believe it's called a mirror cube. So it looks like this, and it is a 3x3. You solve it the same way that you would solve this, except that all the sides are the same color. And instead of going by what color they are, each one of these pieces, you'll see, has, like this piece here, it's like a short but wide. The top of it is regular square shaped, whereas this one, this corner piece, that's a short by short, and then this side is a long by short, and this one's a short wide regular length. And so, like many of these pieces, each of the sides are a different color. So, like the edge pieces, the two parts that would be two different colors are two different sizes. What that looks like when you twist the pieces is they go out of alignment like that. This is aligned properly for the 3x3 rotation. When you really, I don't want to twist it because it took me 4 hours to solve it. And I only solved it by accident. Here's the thing. With this one, when solving it, with the mirror cube, when solving it, I can do the bottom layers perfectly. I can even roughly get the top layer into its locations. The thing is, when they're twisted like that, the orientation of the pieces, they're rotated around, so some stick up, some lay flat, and so like the rest of the square looks like this, but everything from here up is a jumble of bumpy parts. And trying to figure out how to move those around this and get them into the right orientation without using what I understand of the colors on this one, the beginner's method doesn't work. Because the beginner's method for this gets you to the point where you look at the colors on the corners here and figure out, okay, based off of the yellow shape I have up top here, how do I rotate, and it's also in CFOP. You're going essentially for another method for doing the regular Rubik's Cube is you get the white side figured out, and then you build the 2 layers on top of that. And then this last layer, you start by looking for, do you have a single dot in the center? Do you have a line through the center? Or do you have a angle in the shape here? Now, it's irrelevant whether or not there are a few other yellows anywhere else on the face. It's just you're looking for that center. Does it connect to 2 sides in a line? Yes or no? Does it connect to 2 sides in an L or R shape? Yes or no? Does it connect to nothing else in the center edges arrangement? And those are the 3 configurations you're going to get on the top edge. That's based off of yellow tiles. There is no such thing here. And I haven't figured the knack out yet of being able to consider these faces to be yellow based off of their size. Because one of the tricks you'll encounter, if these faces are all, if you count all these shapes as yellow, there are other shapes that are so bloody close to it that it's just gonna make it impossible. And so they're solving for the yellow top and then rotating the corners into the correct orientation based off of the color sequencing. There's another way to do this, I'm sure. I have to figure it out. So it's sort of a fun little mental exercise to play myself through. I also got this one, which I've seen some, like, it took me forever to find anybody talking about it online, and it turns out people are calling it the Rubik's cheese. It's not a Rubik's. It's not an actual Rubik's, and I believe Rubik's supposedly came out the Rubik's called a cheese. But basically, this one rotates like that, so you have to get the colors on the top lined up right. And you can rotate them in and out of position and get different combinations of that. But even when you do that, you can get the tops and bottoms of these done right and not get the sides right. Because the way this is put together, the sides and the tops and bottoms are not linked. So it's entirely possible to get your top and bottom set up right and have everything on the sides wrong. And there's an algorithm for moving pieces around the side. And I have not seen a good demo or example of how to do this on YouTube. I looked and looked and looked, and what I had to sit down was basically look at the algorithm that many people use to move pieces along the side. I had to sit down and track down, okay, what happens when I move this way, rotate up this way, rotate this way, and rotate up again this way? What happens when I do that? And so I actually built a chart that I charted it out to figure it out. Oh, so, and that's one of the things I've done with this one, is I've learned to do the white side and the first 2 layers by looking at it and saying, like, okay, that piece is in the wrong spot. How do I rotate it so that it gets, this is a green, orange, this is the green side, this is the orange side. What moves do you do to rotate it into that location, and why does it move it there? And like learning why things move in a certain way when you do this, 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 and this, it's more than just knowing that, like, if I do this, this happens. It's knowing that its relationship to other pieces changes in this set way, and so you can understand how to control that change. So that's been a fun experience to do. But solving for the cheese has been an interesting adventure, and I've sort of gotten it now, but I'm still at the stage where like I've gotten it and I'm reasonably sure I've gotten it, but I don't want to scramble it right now because I don't want to have to try to prove that I've gotten it. This one was hard to track down. This is a Paraminx Duo, I believe, and this one was hard to find. I eventually found it on a separate website, and it's a very, very simple. Like if you were looking to get into solving some of these puzzles, this might be the place to start, because you're always about 4 moves away from solving it. So it's scrambled now. The easiest way I've found to look at it is to say, all right, look at the top. The top has 3 colors on it: blue, yellow, and red. I probably pointed to those in the wrong order, but blue, yellow, and red. There are 4 colors on this thing. What color is not there? Green. So the side exactly opposite from this point has to be green. So in order to do that, you're going to rotate all the green faces down. Now you've got green on that side. Doesn't always come up with the green in the center, but you're going to notice that there's red along the bottom, blue, yellow. This piece up here just needs to be matched to that, and it's solved itself this time. Now sometimes you'll get it so that the center isn't on core. So in this case, you'll usually have like a yellow and a red and a yellow and a blue and a green and a green and a blue, and all you have to do is rotate your corners alternatingly. So let's see if I can get the camera to see. You would do up, up, down, down, and it solved itself. And so you do this side up, this side up, this side down, and it reorients that middle. And that's pretty straightforward. So it's super easy to solve, but it gives you it gives you an early victory, which is helpful. But it also gives you a sense of like watching a piece or figuring out where a piece is based off where it should be based off of where it can't be. So like on this side that you're looking at the point you're seeing, there's no red on it. So none of these 3 faces can be red. It's just impossible. No amount of turning that face, this corner, will turn any of those top faces red. So that means this face has to be red. Being able to figure that out, and then based on that, doing a certain set of rotations of those pieces to get them into the right position, and then knowing that this one has to rotate in a certain way to match all the other 3 faces that are partially solved, and then figuring out just how to move those centerpieces. Now there are ways that you can re-sticker the centerpieces so that you have to get the correct direction it's facing. So these can rotate, but because they're all the same color on all 3 points, it doesn't matter what orientation you put them in. But yeah, so that's a fun, simple one. And I've also I have not experimented with the Ghost 1 by, what do we call this? It's a Ghost floppy, I guess is what they want to call it. But it's 1 by 3. I guess it's technically a 1 tall by 3, 4 or 3 or 5 across the middle. Like, I don't know what you want to call the 3rd dimension on that one. But it's based off of the ghost cube, but it's a single layer. And the thing I love about this is this was trippy, and it took me a while to figure out why it does this. Is it's one layer thick, but when you rotate this layer here, these pieces rise off the surface, so they're connected to this middle one, right? Well, if they're connected to this middle one, how can I rotate this one up and take that corner that's already been moved on this axis and move it across this axis? And it was just like, oh, that's really neat. The mechanics of this is an amazing set of mechanics on this thing, and I fell in love with it as soon as I saw somebody show it off online. I had to buy one. And they're reasonably priced. They're not super expensive, which is cool because I can play with it and tinker with the mechanical components of it and not cry if I lose a screw or a spring that keeps it together right. So yeah, I'm loving these things, and I'll get to some of the reasons and applications. I did want to share a couple of the ones I haven't really experimented with. This first box I actually got off of Amazon was a speed cube set. So it's a 3x3, a 2x2, and a Pyraminx. Now, a 2x2 is supposed to be just like doing the corners of a 3x3, but there's some limitations on what maneuvers you can do. I haven't quite sat down yet to try to figure out how to solve it. Why won't you come out of the box? Is that part of the puzzle? So it's a 2x2. It's just the two axes of I guess it's technically 3 axes of motion. I can do front and back. So I haven't figured that one out yet, but I haven't really sat down to try yet. I've been trying to relearn techniques, especially for that mirror cube. That mirror cube. Oh, wow. That one hit the edge. Like, why won't you solve? I almost lost my mind. And I haven't played with the regular Pyraminx too much. I used to have one when I was younger, and I didn't ever learn to solve it reliably. But it's a different set of mechanisms for this one, if memory serves me correctly, because I've taken a few things like this apart in the past just to see how they work. And the way this works is the core on a 3x3. Let's take this cheap 3x3 here. This is a knockoff that I got somewhere. The core on these are like this. It's a T, I guess. I don't know how else to call that. It's like a graph. It's a three-dimensional graph center. And each of the squares at the center of each face is secured in the center. With this, it's not a X, Y, Z coordinate system for the core. This one is it's a 4-point rather than a 6-point. So each point on this triangle, if memory serves, should have one of the bars from the center going to it, screwing into it. So it can move at diagonals to the vertical plane. Now, each one of these points is sort of decoratively moving. None of these points will ever relocate to an edge. So it's sort of like a decorative movement on that one, but it's a different system of movement and coordination. So I'm kind of curious to dabble with that one a little bit more. And then this last one I wanted to show off. I'm running long on this one, but I saw this, and I do like the spheres. I love a good sphere puzzle. And this one is an odd one. Each one of these little... let's try to find one that's not super bright in the lighting. Okay, so we take the blue. You push it in. Now the blue is empty. It's relocated to the black. might be easier to see with the red. So red is there, surrounded by red. But if you push it in, it rebounds out of there, and you can kind of see inside the bottom side of that red ball, and the bottom side of the blue, bottom side of the green. So it just bounces in there, and it bounces up into that black spot. And that little yellow bit in the middle, that is essentially like a rubber foam ball, like a hard foam ball, that when you press down on the exterior balls, they bounce against it enough that you can shift their location, and it presses up enough that once it's into another location, it'll jump up into the circle that is vacant. And so scrambling this, it's not a super hard one. I mean, you can see right now that if I just moved this one into that spot, and then this one into that spot, and this one into that spot, I could run them in a circle and trade them around. And so it's really not super hard to move them around, but it is sort of a fun little design puzzle. But that is all of those puzzles. I am loving every single one of them for different reasons. So I would definitely rate getting a basic cube set as something people should definitely consider doing. I think as a little puzzle and mental exercise, they're good. But even beyond that, the potential application for a few things is, I'll get into that right now actually. Let's put the 3x3 in with the rest of this set, close that up, put that off to the side, ghost cube on top. That's not a ghost cube, that's a ghost, that's a mirror cube. There you go. And then, there we go. Oh, and my cheese. Who moved my cheese? All right, so the basic review, I would put these at my new favorite fidget toy hobby. So I would say this is easily a 6.3 out of a 6.5 for all of them, pretty much. Now, for things like the Rubik's cheese, I think it's sort of fun to be able to look at them and have to come up with explanations as to why the pieces move the way they do with a given set of algorithms. It's not as open and shut case as like knowing that when you're solving this one, if you do a righty alg, then it's really tight. Such and such pieces move in their orientation on the cube, and knowing exactly why and where they went. That's an important kind of understanding of spatial movement and the relationships certain things have. But on top of that, is sort of a means of, for me, one of the reasons. So yeah, I would rank them all good. Idea one for this is these are almost meditative toys for me, in that when I am in a situation where my mind is racing and running over like stressful, anxious moments for me, it's easier for me to derail that thought process by just distracting myself with fixing the things as they are here. And, you know, it's something I used to have to deal with when I was younger, when I can remember a time when I lost one of my jobs because of an employer who is an unkind soul, who blamed everybody in the place for their own shortcomings. And as a consequence of that, I got let go one afternoon, and I wasn't even really let go. I was told that they wouldn't give me hours until they felt like giving me hours again, so I couldn't claim unemployment because I wasn't fired. I'm still technically employed. I just wouldn't get any hours. And they schedule my hours, so if they didn't give me hours, I didn't work for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, months until they decided they wanted to bring me back. And so instead of being angry and just storming out, and I went out to the car and I folded origami. And there are a couple patterns of origami that I remember just core in my head. I don't have to look at a diagram to do them. So I just folded those, and by the time I was done folding 3 of those forms, I was calm. It derailed this stressful thought process and let me reorganize my head and come back at it from an angle where I've managed to secure employment elsewhere and turn them down when they called me back to come back in 3 months later. So like being able to derail the racing and angry and frustrated thoughts into, if I do this, this happens. If I do this, this happens. You get a sense for simple actions lead to successful results in a certain sequence, and your brain is just focusing on going from step A to step B to step C, and it's not running through a process of a confusing upset. Number 2 is, for me, a really good way of illustrating the mechanical nature of pieces in motion. So like being able to see how the inside of this Pyraminx works. Like knowing that if I twist this piece, it rotates that center piece there. And how that rotation is anchored in this center piece here, because as I twist it, that center piece doesn't shift. So clearly, rotating this corner is anchored on this piece. It also happens to mean that rotating these pieces, like this piece here, anchors here. This piece here anchors here. So it has 4 anchor points and shifts on 4 axes. That's a fascinating thing to learn about how a piece like this works. And that's an interesting mix. So that's yellow, so that goes to that one. And bum 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 bum. Do 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 do. Ah, there we go. That's because I put it together wrong. Understanding how it fits together and knowing why something's wrong. That's useful. Understanding the mechanisms of how this ghost floppy work means I can understand a little bit more about how, like, some of the potential applications of some of those mechanisms are really interesting. And, you know, so, like, all right, that's 2. Number 3 is for things like the ball puzzle. If I really wanted to play around with stuff like this, I might be able to include an electronic component that made each one of these balls, as they moved inside the sockets, produce a certain tone and shift their tone as I shift them around. So make a somewhat musical device that lights up and move. Like, I could have a blast altering and playing around with and designing interactive electronic displays with puzzles like some of these. I could even do it with like the cheese. And so that's 3. Number 4 is this guy. I gotta tell you, part of the reason I got this one is because when you scramble it, when you truly scramble, and I'm not gonna do it because that drove me nuts. When you truly scramble it, it looks like a piece of futuristic architecture. And for building background sets and artwork pieces, to have all the scrambled pieces out of order in a bizarre and interesting way makes for a very kind of beautiful looking, somewhat brutalist, somewhat cubist uh, architectural style, especially since they're all like, you can get them in the chrome, like brushed aluminum finish, or the gold finish, and you can get them in some colors too. But I think with the chrome or the brushed aluminum finish, it has a very skyscrapery feel. And so stacking them up for uh, basically taking two of them and stacking them together in their jumbled forms, you can stack them in 8 or 9 different ways, and if you composite those together, you can make a whole cityscape for a backdrop. I was like, that's just, and like, or just decor, just a design element. Green screen it in behind me for the YouTube videos if I ever get that worked out. Um, but yeah, so that's what, number 4. Number 5, idea-wise, is I got a bunch of these junk ones. They're not super great, but they're enough that I can mod them to make custom shapes on them. So I can make some modified experimental art cubes. So like, I looked online when I first started looking into some of these puzzles, and I looked up some novelty designs on some of these. And a few of them are eggs, which is one of my favorite shapes, an egg shape. And I got to thinking, well, I could mod one of these into an egg shape. Like, to make an egg shape 3x3 wouldn't be super hard. You just build up the edges enough and keep the alignment of the turning points right that you can make one. And I've seen some cylinders that you could do the same way. So I could bang this into a cylinder relatively easily and make an egg out of this one. But there's also the possibility of orienting them this way inside the egg shape. So do something like this and then do the egg shape around that. And that, I saw a 2x2, that wasn't a 3x3, but a 2x2, which I felt like I wanted a 3x3. But they had a 2x2 that was a metallic blue with a golden top. It was over $18, I think, was the price I saw. I think it might have been even over $21. I'm not paying $21 for that, especially since I wanted a 3x3 and it only came in a 2x2. But I can reshape these, and I can repaint the reshaped pieces whatever colors I want to do. So yeah, being able to mod and make your own versions, absolutely. And then number 6. For me, I think overall, just being able to just sort of like give yourself a fidget spinner that isn't doing nothing. Like the spinners that everybody was crazy about for so long, they literally just spin. You're not working towards a goal, you're not achieving anything, you're just expending. Like, I've fidgeted with this a lot. It's a super easy solve, and it's a super easy scramble. And it's fun to just twist the pieces around, but then in the end, just being able to say, okay, so yellow's going to be on the bottom, so that one has to go that way, and that one has to go that way, and that one has to go that way, so that means that this one goes this way, and to solve, I just do this, 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 and this. And it's a sense of achievement. Like, I figured that out. I did something other than just expend physical energy in a go nowhere exercise. And occasionally when you're really just trying to do something like that, you have a little extra energy to expend and you want to solve something more complicated, then you really move into the ones where you have to work to solve them. And sometimes you do one that takes you hours to solve. And it's a good way of just kind of fidgeting in a way that there is a victory scenario, some kind of win at the end. So those are the 6 ideas about this kind of thing. There are a couple other ideas of things to create, but for the most part, creating puzzles like this, modifying puzzles like this, and playing with puzzles like this are, I think, a totally worthwhile exercise, and it's something I'm going to be doing a lot more of, I imagine, in the near future. If anybody wants a solve video for the cheese, I might do a better one than the one I saw. But yeah, that's the product and service for this month. What's today? Today's Monday? Well, I guess by the time this goes up, it's Tuesday. So Wednesday night-ish or Thursday will be the next video, and that will be a taste test, I believe, and then artwork, and then video game. I think that's where we're going these days. Alrighty, this is 36 minutes long, and I'm not going to be able to edit it, so sorry. See you for the next one.